Welcome to this deep dive into the life of Mila Repa.
Mila Repa.
Yeah, you know him as the legendary Tibetan yogi, but get ready for some twists.
Okay.
Because this isn't just a story about enlightenment, it's about magic revenge and this wild world of ancient Tibet that shaped him.
Yeah, you're right. It's easy to romanticize the past, but when Mila Repa was alive, Tibet in the 11th century was a tangle of feuding territories.
Really?
Magic wasn't fantasy. It was woven into the fabric of their belief.
So different from that unified, peaceful Tibet we might picture today.
Right.
And speaking of pictures, the map you provided of Tibet, it really brings it to life. Seeing those locations, Kiangatsa, where he was born, the regions he traveled through, you can practically trace his journey from vengeance to enlightenment.
It wasn't a journey he chose at first, though.
Oh.
Mila Repa's early life was marked by a terrible betrayal. When his father died, a greedy aunt and uncle seized everything, leaving him, his mother, and his sister utterly destitute.
It's almost like a classic story setup, the hero knocked down, resentment simmering. But then Mila Repa does something truly unexpected. He decides to fight back not with swords, but with sorcery.
And this is where things get really interesting. In Mila Repa's world, black magic wasn't just a legend. It was a real dangerous power, and he pursued it with a singular focus, mastering it to a terrifying degree.
And he unleashes that power at his cousin's wedding celebration,
Oh, wow.
causing their house to collapse in a display of furious magic. It's a shocking act, and in most stories, that would be the villains doing right.
Exactly. And 35 people died in that collapse, including those he held responsible for his family's suffering.
Oh my God.
Even though he achieved his revenge, the sheer weight of his actions, the unintended consequences became a crushing burden.
It makes you wonder, what must that have felt like, to go from burning for vengeance to facing the devastation you'd caused? That has to be the point where he starts looking for redemption, right?
Absolutely. This act, though, successful in his eyes, plunged Mila Repa into deep despair. He recognized the monster he'd become.
Yeah.
This realization became the catalyst for his seeking a different path. The path to enlightenment, to atone for the darkness he'd embraced.
And that's where we meet Marpa the translator,
Marpa.
the no-nonsense Buddhist master known for his, well, let's just say unique teaching methods. What was it like studying with Marpa?
To put it lightly, Marpa didn't believe in coddling his students. He understood what Mila Repa had done, the depths of his darkness, and his training was designed to burn that away. Imagine years of back-breaking labor near impossible tasks, constant setbacks designed to test his commitment.
It sounds brutal, like trading one kind of hardship for another, only this time it's deliberate. Was it all physical labor, though?
Not at all. The physical challenges were only part of the equation. Marpa was guiding Mila Repa through intense meditation, forcing him to confront the darkest parts of himself, the consequences of his actions. This wasn't just about building muscles, it was about dismantling his ego and rebuilding him from the inside out.
I can't even imagine what must have been going through his mind during those years of isolation and brutal training. To go from seeking revenge to willingly embracing such hardship, it really says something about his capacity for change, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's this willingness to confront his past, to face the consequences of his actions head-on, that makes Mila Repa's journey so compelling. He could have easily given up, but he didn't. And that's where we really begin to see the potential for transformation emerge.
It really highlights this idea that the path to enlightenment isn't always, straightforward.
Yeah.
It can be messy, unpredictable, and Marpa definitely seemed to embody that, especially with his rather, shall we say, creative teaching methods.
Creative is one way to put it. There's a famous story about Marpa instructing Mila Repa to build a tower.
Okay.
But just as he'd get close to finishing, Marpa would make him tear the whole thing down and start over.
Wait, seriously? He made him do that multiple times with different designs each time.
Yeah.
I read that in one of the sources, but I thought they were exaggerating. What was the point of all that?
It seems excessive, right? But it gets to the heart of what Marpa was trying to teach, letting go of ego. Every time Mila Repa finished a tower, he'd feel a sense of pride of accomplishment. And Marpa knew that to truly progress, Mila Repa had to dismantle that ego brick by brick, just like those towers.
It's like he was saying, it's not about the destination, it's about surrendering to the journey, however chaotic it might be.
Exactly. And think about the dedication that took. To pour your heart into something, only to tear it down again and again, that requires a special kind of resilience. And it speaks volumes about Mila Repa's commitment to change, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. He could have walked away at any moment, but he stuck with it, facing those challenges head on. And eventually he achieves enlightenment. Not just your average run-of-the-mill enlightenment either. We're talking levitating, walking through walls, the whole mystical shebang.
Right? It's easy to get caught up in the fantastical aspects of those stories, but it's important to remember that these acts, often described as miracles, were seen as outward manifestations of his inner transformation. He had achieved a level of mastery not just over his mind, but over the physical world as well.
So more than just a magician, he became this conduit between the physical and spiritual realms. And what strikes me is that he didn't keep it all to himself. He could have easily disappeared into the mountains and meditated in solitude for the rest of his days, but instead he chose to share his wisdom with the world.
And that's a crucial part of what makes Mila Repa so fascinating. He used his experiences, the good, the bad, the downright bizarre, to help others. His teachings were often spontaneous, delivered through songs and poems, making them accessible to everyone, not just scholars and monks.
He was like the original folk singer of enlightenment. And people really connected with his approach, right? He wasn't just preaching from some ivory tower. He was sharing hard-won wisdom drawn from a life full of incredible highs and lows.
Precisely. His teachings, while deeply rooted in Buddhist philosophy, resonated because they were infused with his own struggles and triumphs. He emphasized compassion not as some abstract ideal, but as a practice forged in the fires of his own tumultuous journey.
And one of the things that really resonated with me was his focus on utilizing difficult experiences as fuel for spiritual growth. It's like he was saying, hey, life is tough, but that toughness can refine us, make us stronger if we let it.
Absolutely. And that's a powerful message even today. We all face challenges, setbacks, moments that make us question everything. Mila Repa's life reminds us that those moments, however dark, can be opportunities for profound transformation, for cultivating compassion and wisdom.
It's a message that transcends time and culture, but it also makes you wonder, how would he have navigated the complexities of our modern world? We're a far cry from 11th century Tibet with all its magic and mysticism. What do you think? How might Milarepa's teachings apply to the challenges we face today? Yeah, it's like he'd say, trade your Twitter feed for a cave wall for a while, see what happens. We're bombarded with distractions, instant gratification anxieties that spread like wildfire online. It's hard to even imagine finding that kind of inner stillness in our world.
It's definitely a different world, but his core message, it feels even more relevant now, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Mila Repa reminds us that true change starts from within by confronting our own negativity, our desires, the things that we cling to, even when they cause us suffering.
And that's not a one-time fix. It's a practice. Like, I was struck by how central meditation was to his transformation. You mentioned the practice of tumo and or fire meditation that he was said to have mastered.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Tumo is incredibly difficult, requiring intense focus and control.
Yeah.
But it exemplifies how Mila Repa used these practices not just to escape the world, but to refine himself so he could then engage with the world from a place of greater compassion and clarity.
Which makes his choice to teach all the more powerful. I read a passage from The Magic Life of Mila Repa, and it really stayed with me. He's surrounded by followers, but instead of claiming all the glory, he says, may people in the future who have the will to meditate by my own austerities be free from obstacles. It's like he took on all that hardship so others could have an easier time of it.
That's the heart of compassion, isn't it? Not just
Mhm.
wishing people well, but actively working to alleviate suffering, even if it means embracing discomfort yourself.
Yeah.
And he did that for decades, guiding others on their own paths to enlightenment.
Okay, so if we bring this back to our listeners, someone trying to navigate the modern world with all its complexities, what's the biggest takeaway they can glean from Mila Repa's journey? What's the one thing they should hold on to?
I think it's that idea of transformation being possible, regardless of your past. Mila Repa went from being consumed by vengeance to embodying compassion. He didn't shy away from his darkness. He confronted it head on and emerged stronger, wiser. It's a potent reminder that we all have that capacity for change within us.
It's inspiring, even if most of us aren't going to be levitating anytime soon. It makes you think, if Mila Repa could transform himself so radically, what might be possible for each of us? Maybe we can't all become enlightened masters, but we can strive to be a little kinder, a little more understanding, a little more like Mila Repa in our own lives.
Absolutely. And every step we take in that direction, no matter how small, ripples outwards. Maybe that's the true legacy of Mila Repa's life. A reminder that compassion has the power to transform not just ourselves, but the world around us.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this. What darkness within you might be calling out for transformation? What would it take for you to answer that call, not with fear or judgment, but with the same fierce compassion that Mila Repa ultimately embraced? Think about that as you go about your day. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the life and lessons of Mila Repa.